Hey, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike. When I make one of these dead zone videos, I'm essentially looking at a part of the city and trying to overlay what I think a functional bike network would look like and outline the challenges each section would face. The Windsor Street Exchange is a lot. It moves something like 100,000 vehicles per day, making it a contender for one of the most traffic-intense locations in the entire province. When I first put this video on the schedule, I figured I would end up doing some epic redesign of the whole thing and show how traffic could flow better under most conditions, even while accommodating more pedestrian and cycling access. But the further I got into it, the more I decided that just wasn't necessary. Whatever changes get made to the exchange, the main section is basically always going to be a jumbled mess of traffic, transit, and freight, and all I really have to do is plot a course through it for bikes and pedestrians. Okay, let's start with what we're trying to connect to. The city's bike network doesn't go anywhere particularly near the exchange, but these are some good targets to aim for. We have the northernmost extent of the Chain Lakes Trail on Joe Howe Drive. It currently just kind of ends at a grocery store. On the peninsula, we have the Windsor Street painted bike lanes. These fade out of existence on approach to the intersection with Connaught due to the need for turn lanes, presumably. In the north end, there are the Devonshire protected bike lanes that connect to the part of the bike network that runs mostly uninterrupted all the way to downtown Halifax, and the North End Bikeway, which connects to destinations in the north end and towards the center of the peninsula. We also have a few pieces of bike infrastructure that don't currently exist, but plausibly will at some point in the future. The most obvious is some kind of bike network connection running along the Bedford Highway. The city is in the early stages of designing it as a multi-use path. It could take on any design, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to stick it on the southern edge of the road leading to the exchange. That seems like that's where it would go. One connection that doesn't get talked about very often is the Mackay Bridge. Currently, there's no way for bikes to use the Mackay, but with it approaching the end of its serviceable life cycle, it's likely to be completely revamped or even replaced sometime in the next 20 or so years. It's pretty likely that the next iteration of the Mackay will have some kind of bike infrastructure on it, so I've attached an access point on the southern side. Obviously, there's no guarantee that the future bridge will have the exact same alignment as the current one, but hey, I'm working with the information I've got. Lastly, there's been a long-standing complaint that the Africville Park and museum in it are not really accessible by pedestrians and cyclists. It's a perfectly good park and it goes underused because it's hard to get to, so let's connect it to the bike network and make it easier for people living in the north end to walk to it. Before I start drawing lines, let's update our model of what the exchange is going to look like in a few years based on city staff current designs. This won't really matter for the pathing, but it's useful to keep in mind that the area won't look the same in a few years. Relatedly, the Strawberry Hill area next to the exchange is going to be getting a bit of a glow up, being flipped to a medium to high density residential neighborhood at some point in the near future, and that's probably going to change how the roads work in the area. Starting with the easiest, let's connect the hypothetical Bedford Highway multi-use path to the very real Chain Lakes Trail running along Joe Howe Drive. This is straight from the city's design sketches for the upgrades of the exchange and doesn't seem to present any problems. Next, we have to provide a path through the main section of the exchange itself. The city's preliminary design converts the existing sidewalk systems into multi-use paths. They're relatively wide already for this section, so the change won't be that extensive. This also provides direct paths of travel between each pairing of the Bedford Highway, Joe Howe Drive, and the peninsula without any double back or unnecessary hill climbing for cyclists. The city sketches extend the path towards the existing bike lanes in Windsor, but don't show how they would connect to one another. I suspect this is because connecting one-way and two-way infrastructure pieces outside of something like a roundabout is always going to be kind of janky. There's an existing pedestrian crossing at Windsor and Hood that could be the most likely place for a switchover between the two systems. It's not efficient, but it's probably the easiest of the options that doesn't involve redesigning this section of Windsor Street from the ground up. Further to the north, both myself and the city's design would continue the multi-use path up Lady Hammond Road. This would also need a connection to the existing Devonshire bike lanes and North End Bikeway. Lady Hammond is quite wide for a two-lane road, so there shouldn't be any issue extending the lanes from Devonshire along it towards the exchange. There would need to be a similar connection point between the two-way and one-way systems as we had on Windsor Street. I've placed that connection point nearer to the exchange, but an argument could be made that it would be better placed closer to the intersection with Isleville. The natural instinct to connect to the Mackay is just to follow the existing path of travel for motor vehicle traffic, but that would require building out a lot of stuff that doesn't already exist and running it through a section of land that doesn't really have anything to interact with. So, for the sake of saving on costs, I'm just going to connect to the Mackay via the existing network. The current bridge is essentially at-grade with novelty, such that barely any work would be needed to connect the new version of the bridge to the bike network, assuming a similar placement. Last on the to-do list is to connect to the Africville Park and Museum. The city's plan is a circuitous path running along Africville Road from the exchange and to the park. That's fine, but if we're already nearby with the bridge connection anyways, maybe we can just run a path down to the park. After all, the main user base for the park is going to be people living in the north end anyways. The easiest approach would be to formalize the existing path to be something a bit better than the current mud goat path that exists now. This is roughly what it would look like. It's not too bad if you're on a bike, but it's a little bit indirect if you're a pedestrian. Theoretically, you could do some kind of ramp from the Lookout Park down to the museum, but maintaining clearance for Barrington, the rail line, and Africville Road while also having the ramp be shallow enough to be usable by cyclists and pedestrians seems like it'd be quite a project, so my default would probably be to just upgrade the existing path. Zooming back out, is this good? It's better than what we have today, but there's definitely some parts that I'm not enamored with. The design I laid out mostly relies on multi-use paths to get bikes through the exchange. That should work fine as long as there isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic. Currently, there isn't that much because, to be honest, the area kind of sucks and there isn't a lot of destinations within walking distance to generate foot traffic. That might change as Joe Howe Drive and especially Strawberry Hill adds density. There will be thousands of people leaving immediately on either side of the exchange, and walking across to access businesses on the other side is pretty foreseeable. Due to space constraints, it's understandable that we would still go with multi-use paths anyway, though. From a safety perspective, the default future design of the exchange is a bit wanting for people outside of a car. Almost any trip through the exchange using this layout of bike and pedestrian infrastructure would have something like a half-dozen conflict points with free-flowing traffic. This can somewhat be addressed by removing slip lanes wherever possible and consolidating the number of turn movements and access points through the exchange. This would be good for pedestrian and cyclist safety, but I would also argue that it would be better for traffic in the long run. If there's a marked increase in pedestrian and cyclist traffic through the exchange, relying on slip lanes could actually end up interfering with traffic. There are some added inefficiencies to moving through the exchange by bike that get generated by the need to connect two-way multi-use paths to one-way bike lanes, but that's essentially baked in once the multi-use paths are the preferred way to get bikes through the exchange to begin with. Overall, these kinds of changes would make the exchange a lot more bikeable than under the status quo conditions, but I think it would still be a pretty unpleasant place to move through outside of a car. That's a wider issue with what the exchange is and how it works, and it's a bit out of scope for this video. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos all about getting around Halifax by bike, and let me know in the comments how you would want to move bikes through the Windsor Street Exchange. That's it for this one. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.